What's up, man? How's it going? Another awesome day here. Tuesday, I should say. Time for your weekly recap. Had another fun week. Well, I shouldn't say we had a fun week. Some of us had a fun week this week. Others are, yeah. Some of us are having more fun than others. We'll just say that. Let's just dive right into it. Honestly, I haven't looked at these matchups. You'd be surprised at how busy a guy gets being on unemployment. It's really, well, I shouldn't say I'm not on unemployment yet, but we won't cut open that vein just yet. But yeah, I've been kind of busy, so honestly, totally forgot about this till right now. So we're just going to quick dive into it and get her done and start running through the matchups here. Yeah, I think we're kind of, we're only 2 weeks in, but I think we're starting to see whose teams are, the creme de la creme, as one would say, and who are just going to, pun intended, flounder this year. So let's dive into it. Let's take a look at these matchups here. First matchup we have is Perk versus Nick. And Perk, he got the win in this one. 153 points to Nick's 131. And what I'll say about that is 131's about, I feel like, 120, 125 is about an average score in this league. So definitely not a bad score, but yeah, it's probably about a 60% chance you're going to win if you score 131 points. And Nick did not. So Nick falls to 0-2. He has yet to record a victory yet this year. He's in 8th place. Perk is 1-1, and he's in 7th place. So both of these teams out of playoffs if they started today, which they do not. Let's take a look at the matchup really quick. Perk had a pretty solid week out of his team. He got 154 points essentially, but a lot of that was carried on the back of one of his players, which was Aaron Jones last night. When you score 4 touchdowns, it's pretty hard to, if you have a player who scores 4 touchdowns and 41.5 points like he did, you shouldn't lose most of your matchups. The only player that he had on his team that did not score double-digit points was his kicker. Everybody else did really good. Obviously, like I said, he had 153 points. Nick's team, he had a handful of players do pretty good, but he had a lot of other players, really drag down his team. He had Aaron Rodgers do 27 points, Devontae Adams 20 points, Mike Evans 24.5 points, which, you got a little lucky with Evans there, but, he's still a top 10, 15 receiver, whatever you want to call it. And, the rest of his players, but looking at his bench, he's had 3 players on his bench who scored over 20 points. He had Cortland Sutton, who had 25 points, Brandon Cooks, 23 points, and Jalen Hurts, 22 points, which, obviously, you're going to start Rodgers over Hurts every time anyways, but Nick maybe could have snuck out a win here, but he did not. So that is the first matchup. Congratulations to Perk on his first victory of the year. Next matchup, we have Matt versus Corey. And both of these teams are 1-1. Matt is in 4th place, and Corey is in 6th place. Pretty close matchup on all things considered. Corey pulls away the victory, 145.5 to 135.5, essentially. So within 10 points or less, that's I consider that a close matchup. Let's take a look at the players here. Matt had Patty Mahomes with 25, Austin Eckler 22.5, Travis Kelce 24, Mike Williams 22. He had some really good players, and then he had some just complete duds. So, that's kind of what drug him down a little bit. He had Malcolm Brown on his bench, 23 points, so he could have subbed in. Actually, he couldn't have subbed him in. Or no, I take that back. He could have, subbed him in for Amari Cooper and probably gotten the victory there, but he didn't. So, there's no Vocking way you're going to win when you do that. Anyways, Corey wasn't. I don't know if he even knew that we had fantasy football this weekend, but Lamar Jackson 34 points, Terry McLaurin 28 points, Tyler Lockett 32 points, and it's good that he scored all those points because he also had a player on his team, albeit his kicker, scored 0 points. So, maybe Corey, you need a backup kicker to that way you don't have to start. Let's put it this way: if you're starting players on a team who scores 0 points throughout the whole entire game, odds are you're not going to do very well, especially when that player is a kicker. So, but hey, you got the victory. It doesn't really matter how you got there. Matt, you literally lost to a team who had one player scored 0 points. So there's that. Matt in 4th, Corey in 6th, both teams in the playoffs if they started today, which once again they do not. Next matchup we have between Mike and Mitch. And Mitch pulled out his 2nd victory of the year out of 2, which means he hasn't lost yet. which is pretty cool for him. He scored 130 points, and Mike was right behind him, less than a point by 100. He lost 129.68 to 130.44. So 0.9, 0.8 points, whatever that amounts out to be. Mike 1-1 and in fifth place. Mitch 2-0 and in second place. Let's take a look at the matchup. The only player that, or no, I take that back. Mike had two players worth mentioning. He had Cooper Kupp, who had 37 points, awesome game, and he had New England's defense, who scored 22 points, which pretty good when your defense scores over 20 points. Nothing really to talk about on his bench. So I mean, honestly, Dak scoring you 8.5 points is probably what kicked you in the ass. I mean, if any of your players would have scored one more point, you would have won, but Dak, most notably, would probably have been the most likely to get you that extra point. On Mitch's team, he had Tom Brady with 30 points. He had Christian McCaffrey with 25 points. You know, Mitch, I mean, you've made it past 2 weeks now. I feel like any extra weeks you get out of Christian McCaffrey at this point is just, you know, it's a bonus. You know, we only expected him to get 1 or 2 weeks. Gronk had 20 points. And he had, who's on his bench, he had DJ Moore. He had DJ Moore on his bench. Sorry, I couldn't think of his first name. I just saw the D Moore. I couldn't think. 21 points. So, I mean, Mitch could have won by more, but, I mean, you don't need to win by more. To get the win, you just need to score more points than your opponent, which is exactly what Mitch did. And whether you score 0.1 points more or 100 points more, you win. So, Mitch, second place. Congratulations on your 2-0 start. I think you already have more victories this year than you did all of last year. So congratulations on that. Next matchup we have Brandon versus Ben. And Brandon scored his second win of the year with a astonishing 119 points. So, I mean, in my opinion, if you score 119 points, most times you should lose. But when you play the team who gets the weekly low score, you're always going to win. We have yet to see anybody lose to the guy who scores the fewest points in the league. Ben, 0-2 and in dead last with 101 points. Let's take a look at the matchup here. Literally not one player on Ben's team worth mentioning. His bench had Tony Pollard, which, whatever. But that's weird. Sorry, he's okay, sorry. I was trying to figure out why I didn't see any tight ends on his bench. He started both of his tight ends, so that's why. Might have had something to do with the reason he scored 101 points. Who knows? Brandon, on the other hand, like I said, a whopping 119 points. But hey, you got the victory. 23 points out of Russell Wilson. 21 points out of TJ Hawkinson last night. He had a really good game. And his highest scoring player was his defense. Well, when you shut out another team, you're probably going to score a lot of points. So Brandon, 2-0, and in third place, like I said, Ben, 0-2, and in last place. And I know there was somebody in our league who had mentioned that they thought there should be a different matchup of the week, but honestly, I just couldn't keep the all, you know, I think, what was it, last year when we had Ben Lieber say, you know, Brandon was the all-knowing, the all, you know, he just knows it all, he knows everything, and he tells everybody about it. Honestly, I'm starting to think we need to transfer that title to the gentleman who won this matchup, which was Nate. Nate versus myself in the matchup of the week. Nate, the all-seeing, the all-knowing, the all, whatever, I don't know. I can't come up with any other things. Destroyed me in my horseshit team, 158 points to 115 points. Probably the biggest victory of the week, or the biggest gap, or margin of victory, whatever you want to call it. You know, I didn't have a good week by any means, but, I mean, when you score 150 points, you shouldn't win unless your name's Brandon. But, I mean, I only had 2 players not score double-digit points. And, you know, my bench was no big deal, 60 points on my bench. But, again, not making any excuses. But when you have a quarterback and a running back score a combined, 80 points, over 80 points, you should win. I'm honestly not even mad that I lost this, because he literally had Derrick Henry go off for 48 points. That might be one of the highest point getters of the whole entire year. And he had Kyler Murray going up against the Vikings. So, I mean, what do you expect? My team, honestly, nobody worth mentioning, because nobody scored over 20 points. My closest was Najee Harris, who had 19. Almost all of them in double digits, but yeah. Kyler Murray, like I said, for Nate, 35 points. 48 points for Derrick Henry. Otherwise, he had no players worth mentioning. So really, outside of those two high point getters, it was actually a pretty close matchup, but it wasn't because I lost by a lot. So, that is the weekly recap for week 2. We'll get this posted here. Like I said, we got a little bit of separation. I won't start with the magic numbers yet, although I have been keeping track of them, but obviously after 2 weeks, no reason to start mentioning those. And yeah, so get your waiver moves in, get that fab money out of your pockets, and good luck to everybody in week 3. We'll see you next Tuesday.